Hi, welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. My name is Lisa Curcio. Today is Monday. It is December 18th. The year is 2023. And tonight we're going to DIY some fun fold birthday cards using dies and designer series paper. I am so glad that you're here with me for the special YouTube premiere. I'm live with you right now in the chat. You're not going to want to miss the free project sheet that I'm offering you. It's going to be linked down in the video description below when tonight's premiere is all over. That's going to lead you to pictures, cutting dimensions, and the supplies for all three projects I'm going to share with you tonight, including, of course, that one I'm going to demonstrate for you. I want to make sure, too, you know how to chat with us. Perhaps you're watching the replay, or maybe you're here with us live. In order to do so, YouTube requires that you log in using your Gmail address. So go ahead and do that now. I come back and I read every single comment. And for those of you here in the live chat, you're going to see that name in blue, Gina Curcio Hawley. Gina is my daughter. She's also the sales and marketing director here at Lisa's Stamp Studio and an avid stamper. She's here with me to answer your questions live, and we're thrilled that you're here with me. All right, we're ready. Let's get started. We're going to begin with a piece of basic white cardstock. This is going to be the card base. It's cut your typical size at 5.5 by 8.5. I'm going to bring in my paper trimmer. I'm going to use that light blade for scoring. The dark blade is for cutting. They stay on the clear track at the same time. They just navigate up and down out of the way, which means you can keep them both on there. First score line is going to be at 4.25 inches, which is just going to score this in half. Nice and simple. So it's your typical card base. I'm going to go ahead and grab my bone folder, and we are going to fold up on that crease line. Now is a good time to make sure those ends are nice and even, and then we'll just reinforce that score line. The next step is going to be to add the designer series paper. And I'm using this beautiful paper from the designer series paper pack called Stargazing. Now, one side is very much a galactic type of background with beautiful planets and starscapes. But this side is really quite versatile, so I can use it for just about anything. And I love that about the double-sided designer papers with Stampin' Up. Let's go ahead and let's adhere this. I'm going to use my silicone craft sheet because adhesive, liquid glue, and hot glue will not stick to it. I'm going to add my adhesive around the outside perimeter. I'm using the Stampin' Seal Plus, and it's very, very strong, so I like to use it in very small strips. And then I'm going to create an X right here in the center because we're going to end up doing some die cutting. Now I'm going to leave this right here on top of the silicone craft sheet. I love to have that contrasting background. Now, since I don't do too many things straight, you can turn this the other direction because I find this is easier for me visually. And what you're looking to do is to create that small border all the way around. By using the dashes on my adhesive versus full strips, this is going to give me a little bit of wiggle room just in case I need to move things a little bit. Now that we have this finished, we're going to work with some die cutting. Now, to make this amazing fun fold card, you're going to want dies that had graduated sizes. So I'm using the Nested Essentials dies. It's one of my favorites here in the studio. I've pulled out the 2 medium sizes here from this package. Now, the other samples I have for you are going to use different dies. The only thing you need to know is they need to be graduated sizes. So we're going to start with the largest size first. You're going to open up the card base. You're going to end up die cutting and opening here on the card front. Now, if you're like me and you know it's going to shift around and move when you put it in your die cutting machine, I want to give you a great tip. This is where the Post-it labeling and cover-up tape comes into play. You can see that it comes off here on the dispenser, and you can rip longer pieces and then tear them in half if you choose. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to look visually. I don't measure. If you want to, by all means, you can. So I'm looking here to here and here to here and then side to side and just trying to make it as straight as I possibly can. When I'm happy with it, I'm going to use that tape right over the die onto the designer series paper. This now is going to secure this in place, and I'm going to pass it through my die cutting machine. Now that I have die cut it, let me give you an important tip. Remember, you're going through 2 layers, the designer paper and the cardstock. You want to make sure that it's die cut all the way through. You should be able to see those cut lines. If for some reason you don't, go ahead and put it through your machine again because it's been tacked in place. It will not shift. Now you're going to carefully remove the tape, and I say carefully because I love to reuse this. You might have noticed that I had them here stuck on the front, and I find I can get about 6 uses from those pieces. You'll find this product linked on my website under Shop Craft Room Favorites. Now that we have this piece, we're not going to need it necessarily for this card, but you can certainly save it for another project. Now that we have that opening made, let's talk about this die one more time. We're going to actually create kind of a puzzle format to put the fun fold together, but I decided I wanted this shape that fits inside of here to be a different color. Before you joined me, I went ahead and I die cut a piece in pumpkin pie cardstock, and I used the pumpkin pie designer series paper that's part of that package. Now you might be wondering why I just didn't die cut the paper. It's because it's not thick enough for the stability of the fun fold, and you'll see what I mean in just a moment. So let's bring in that silicone craft sheet once again. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it upside down. Now you can use adhesive, but I found you're going to want to make sure that it's very, very close to that edge because you don't want any lifting when the card pivots through the swing opening. So for this, I'm going to use my glue press. This is a brand new product by My Sweet Petunia. We are an affiliate for them. You'll find it linked for you on my website under Shop Craft Room Favorites. Now, I have really bad basal joint arthritis, which makes squeezing really difficult. So when I first got this, I was a little skeptical, but literally all I have to do is that to get the glue to come out. Now, I always test it on my silicone craft sheet to make sure it's flowing well, and you can see how small I can get those. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to drag the needle tip right around here, around the outside, knowing that your glue is going to ooze a little bit when you press. So I'm just going to add a little bit of glue there. The great thing about this is when it comes back here in the stand, there is a stopper here at the bottom, and you can see that it creates almost an airtight seal between the needle tip and the bottom, which means it's not going to dry out while you're using your glue. I'll bring my Take Your Pick tool in to help me lift that to keep my fingers as clean as possible. And again, we're going to go horizontally, and I'm looking just to line up the outside edges of the cardstock to the designer series paper, and then we'll press that in place. We're going to switch over now to the slightly smaller size of the graduation of these nested dies. And this time I die cut a piece from basic white cardstock. Now you can obviously stamp right on top of here, but in my case, I decided to add an embellishment to the top or an image for whatever you choose. Let's go ahead and push those off to the side and let's work on that next. I'm going to be using the stamp set Year to Celebrate. Now, right now, this is on the Stampin' Up! Last Chance Products list, which means it's retiring, and I have absolutely loved it because you can use it for birthdays, New Year's, and all kinds of celebratory occasions. So if it's not sold out, you're going to want to make sure you grab yourself one because you are going to love this for years to come. You can see that the images are solid and that they piece together. And even though it's photopolymer, I had difficulty lining them up. So I brought in my Misty stamp positioning tool. Now this is the mini Misty, and of course there's a full-size one and one for scrapbookers as well. I have fallen in love with it for those stamps that are difficult for me to press to get a good solid image because of my hands, as well as those that I have difficulty aligning. So I'm going to bring in a scrap piece of basic white cardstock here. I like to work in the corner just to make sure my cardstock is always perfectly positioned so I can repeat stamping when necessary. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm starting with the blower portion of my party favor, and I'm going to lay that right here on top of the cardstock where I want it. I am going to close the hinge and I'm going to lift. Now you're going to notice that photopolymer is sticky and it's going to want to lift your cardstock. That's very normal. All you have to do is just make sure you're back in the corner so that you're well positioned. Now here on this side, we are going to ink that up with the color of our choice. And I'm using Berry Burst ink. And I love that the hinge on this platform stays nice and flat. Don't worry if you get ink there, you're going to be good to go. I'm going to close that and then I'm going to press. Now you can check and see if there's an area that doesn't look like it's strong enough, close the hinge once again and press out any residual ink. The beauty is if you want to re-ink this, again, you absolutely can. By keeping it in the corner, you are assured that it's going to be positioned correctly every single time. I've just used my chamois off camera, and I'm just going to come in with a microfiber cloth and just dry up that image so we can remove it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to gravitate to the next image, which is the blower portion. So I'm going to line this up where I want it. My best tip for this image is to overlap the two pieces just slightly. Once you have it where you want it, go ahead and close that door and let it lift. And again, that photopolymer may stick if your stamp is brand new. So you want to reposition it again in your corner. I'm going to come in with the pumpkin pie ink, and we just need a small tap there because that's a tiny image. And we are going to close the door and we are going to stamp. And you can see that it's beautifully aligned. Now we're going to work on the streamers and we're going to build from the top. And just like at the bottom, you're going to want a slight alignment overlap so that you can make sure that they're aligned well along the edges. Making sure your cardstock is in the corner. Once you're happy, go ahead and close your hinge. And this time I'm coming in with the lemon lime twist ink, and I'm going to ink that up here, and then I'm going to close the door and I'm going to press. Again, if you feel like you don't have a strong enough image and there's residual ink here, just close that hinge again and press out that excess ink you weren't able to get. If you want it a little bit darker, and I think I do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink this one more time, and then we are going to close that once again and then press. Now we have a much more solid image. Once again, I'm just cleaning that off with my microfiber cloth, and I have one more, and this image actually gets what we call two-stepped, which means there's another stamp that provides more detail. Check your corner if you're new with this. Line up your image where you want it, close the door, and lift. This time I'm going to use Granny Apple Green, which is slightly darker, just to give us a little bit of definition. So we'll ink that up as well, close that door, and then we're going to press. And look at the perfect alignment of this image. Now you'll be able to find the Misty and all the wonderful Misty accessories over on my website under Shop Craft Room Favorites. It is a game changer if you have a hard time getting a really good solid image for a stamp, or of course you want perfect positioning. Now there is no die for this stamp set, but this is super easy to cut out. And I want to talk you through this because a lot of people are really intimidated by fussy cutting. I'm using my paper snips, which I absolutely love. They're nice and sharp and they're small, which make them easy to use. When you come around these corners, I want you to watch what I'm doing with the paper versus what I'm doing with my hand. I'm actually turning the paper. That's going to keep my hand in a regular position, and it's going to allow me to be able to pivot the cardstock as I need. So I'm just going to work my way all the way around. And once I'm all finished, we have our image here. Now we're going to set this aside and we're going to come back to this in just a second. There was one more thing I wanted to do, and I wanted to create the greeting. And this says Let's Party. It's from the exact same stamp set. And you might be looking, wow, look at those cute little banner tips. Now, obviously, if you have a die or a punch, you can use that. In my case, I created the banner tip by hand, and I'm going to talk to you about that now. One of the components of this card needs what I call a banner hinge. Now this is 1.5 inches by 5 inches. And keep in mind, all the cutting dimensions and pictures and supplies are in your project sheet. Now we're going to need to create a score line. So I'm going to come back here to my trimmer. I'm going to use that light blade, and this is going to be at 3/4 of an inch. So making sure your paper is here at the ledge where it's nice and straight. I'm lining it here on this side. And I love that there's about 1.25 inches of dimensions here so that you have more paper to hold. Once you have that in place, I'm just going to close that door and I am going to score. This is that score line we just created. It's on this end here that we're going to want to create the banner tip. I'm going back to my paper snips. The best way to do this is to create a slit in the center of the paper visually. The deeper the slit, the more pointed the banner will be. So how you design it is entirely up to you. So I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to make a slit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut from this outside edge to the top of the slit on both sides. So this is one side. And then we're going to turn it and do the other side. Now, if you find this is too difficult for you to hold because it's so small, flip it over. Oftentimes with double-sided designer paper, you're going to have a much easier time of seeing it from the opposite side. Let's work on this piece of cardstock right here. I'm going to bring in some scratch paper because I want to do a little bit more stamping here. And I'm going to be using the lemon lime twist ink that we had already previously used. But there is an image inside the stamp set of confetti, and I thought this might be kind of fun. So I inked it up, but I stamped off a layer here on my scratch paper to make it lighter, which left it here. And I know that's probably hard for you to see, but then what I did is I inked it up one more time and I turned it and I stamped it again. And this is going to make more sense in a second. On top of this white tag is where I'm going to add my confetti blower. So I'm going to turn that upside down. I'm going to bring in my dimensionals and I'm going to pick those up with my Take Your Pick tool. That helps those arthritic hands of mine. And then I'm going to actually add some here near the bottom. Now the edges on these work perfectly for those straight edges of your images, but you can see how narrow it gets. So I'm going to bring in my mini dimensionals and I'm going to be very careful to make sure that I'm going to balance these well because I know I'm going to mail my card and I want to make sure it doesn't come out all lopsided when I'm mailing it. The Take Your Pick tool has that putty tip we just used, but it also has interchangeable tips here. And you can see I've loved this one. This is that spatula to get up underneath that cardstock when you make a boo-boo, but it dials in and it also has the paper piercing tool attachment. It also comes with a putty tip, additional refill, and it also comes with a dual-ended stylus tool. So I like to brace my paper, and I'm actually piercing those dimensionals to remove those paper backings. I love that it wrangles that paper to make it easy for cleanup. This now is going to get placed here on top of the cardstock. So I'm looking near the bottom, but I want my confetti to be prominent near the top of my blower. Now that we have that in place, let's go here with our greeting. Now you can see how narrow it is, so I'm going to bring in that glue press once again. I'm going to work right there in the center, and I'm going to attach that here. Now you might be thinking those little ends are going to sag. Now I could have done this beforehand, which I probably should have. But if you're like me and you had an afterthought, let me teach you about card surgery. These are the mini dimensionals, and these are my scissors that I dedicate to sticky projects. And all I'm going to do while they're here on the paper is cut them in half so that they're smaller. Flat on my work surface, I'm going to remove that paper backing, and then I'm going to grab one of those halves with my Take Your Pick tool. And I love this because it's kind of like an extension of my hand. And we're going to lift, and we are going to place this behind the banner. Nice and easy. Oftentimes when I do this ahead of time, my positioning is never right, and then I have to worry about it showing from the front of my project. So once again, just going to very carefully bow that paper just slightly and then add that mini dimensional. This is going to ensure now that we have equal leverage all the way across the image and it won't sag during mailing. Back here to the card base, we have to work on the inside of the card next before we finish it. Now this one's going to be slightly different in dimension from the one in your project sheet. Two reasons. First, I kind of ran out of some designer paper. And number two, I want to give you a variation on how it can look as far as the border is concerned. So I wanted to bring some color into here, which we will absolutely have to do because we need a white layer to work behind this open image. I'm going to temporarily tack these two together. So I'm going to add a little adhesive here to the back side. I'm going to touch it, because I know the oils from my skin will help break it down, because I just want it to be a temporary fix. Turning it horizontally once again, I am going to look and I am going to center this where I want it, leaving a very narrow margin of color. I am going to flip this upside down and I'm going to do the exact same thing here, because now this is going to be positioned inside the card. Again, you want to make this temporary so that you can actually lift it, because that's going to be very important for that banner hinge. Now, once you have it tacked into place, you're going to close the front of the card and you're going to grab a pencil. Now, this is my very favorite craft pencil ever, and I get lots of comments about it. There's nothing special about it other than the fact it's better than anything else out there. The lead is very soft. The eraser works like a champ. And I have it linked for you on my website under Shop Craft Room Favorites. Close the front of the card, and you're very lightly going to trace the inside perimeter of the die cut opening. So it doesn't matter what shape that you use. When you open up the card, you're going to be able to see that traced image. This is a great time to stamp. Remember, it's temporarily adhered, so in case you make a mistake, you can easily just change the cardstock. So I'm going to come in here with the black Memento ink, which is what I chose for the inside. And again, from that same stamp set, it says, "Happy Birthday to You." So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ink that up in my Memento ink. And I'm very confident with this because it's photopolymer that I can get it right here in the middle. Lots of firm, even pressure. And then once you're happy with it, go ahead and lift. Now I'm going to hold this up so you can see the pencil lines. I've got area to add a little pizzazz. So I thought, let's bring in that confetti once again. Since I already have the lemon lime twist designer paper here, I thought I would use the other colors. So I've got the pumpkin pie ink first. And I'm going to bring in that confetti image. But once again, I'm going to bring in my scratch paper. I don't want this to overpower the greeting, so I am going to stamp off. So I'm going to put one there, and I'm going to navigate another one in a slightly different direction down here at the bottom. I've just cleaned that stamp off camera on my chamois, and I'm going to use the Berry Burst ink. Now, that's a very highly pigmented ink. Now, if you're not sure how it's going to come out, use your scratch paper. So that's full strength. This is stamped off once, that's stamped off twice. You can see the variation of tone. For me, I'm going to stamp off once, and this time I'm going to go in a slightly different direction with that image. Because we're doing it lightly, don't be worried about getting it just perfect. Once the ink is dry, what I want you to do is to lightly twist to release the adhesive. And we're going to do that on both layers because now we're going to put them together. So we're going to flip this one upside down. And we're going to add our adhesive to the back side. Again, working horizontally because that's easier for me. I want that very narrow margin of that designer series paper to show. Remember this hinge? Well, I want to hide this so that it's going to pivot, and I want to do it behind this layer. So let's go ahead and let's bring this in, and you're going to want adhesive here on the inside so that this will flap on purpose. So I'm going to use my Stampin' Seal Plus once again, and I'm going to add that here. This should hit in the center of that pencil mark. The hinge is here. So what I like to do is I kind of like to hold it like a little V, and I like to cup it up against the side. And then once I'm confident that I have it in the center, which it looks pretty good, I'm just going to press from the back side. Now I can cover up my boo-boo. Now if you're wondering how I got that paper off so easily, let me tell you. I used the other end of that Take Your Pick tool. Remember I just showed you that spatula end? Because I am far from perfect. I make mistakes as well. Just make sure when you put your layers down, you don't push too hard, and you are going to be good to go. This time I put adhesive around it again because I want to make sure that it's going to stick well. You can leave this closed, and then once again, I'm going to turn it horizontally to make it easier for my hand because I've already made one mistake. And I'm looking for that nice little border all the way around. Here is another tip for you. If you accidentally adhere something in the wrong place, don't fret. 9 times out of 10, we're able to save it. So let me give you a couple ideas besides the spatula on the end of the Take Your Pick tool, like we just talked about, that works very, very well. The first, believe it or not, is your breath. So a little bit of the Darth Vader technique. You're going to lift it and you're going to huff. The heat and the moistness of your breath will help loosen up the adhesive. The other tip is to use your heat tool. Now the Stampin' Up heat tool has 2 settings, 2 and 1, and I always keep mine close by because yes, I make lots of mistakes. The tip is in case because it gets very, very hot, but it also helps to contain the heat as the gun warms up. So you can use that stand to your advantage so it can sit on your work surface. You're going to want to be very, very careful because you don't want to burn your fingers. But what's going to happen is that adhesive is going to start to loosen in the same manner as your breath. But believe it or not, this works even better and faster. Now that we have this in place, let's go ahead, go back to that pencil, and we're going to erase those pencil lines. Now what we're going to do is we are going to close this, but we are going to bring that banner hinge through the front. And this is where the puzzle piece comes into play with the other pieces we've created. Remember this one? This is the same size as the opening that we cut. And this is where we're going to puzzle them together. You're going to place adhesive within the outside perimeters of your die cut shape. And I love my Stampin' Seal Plus for this because I know it's very, very strong. So I'm going to place that inside here, again within this area. Then I'm going to turn this and I am going to piece this together. So I'm looking here on the top, the bottom, and the sides, and it should nest perfectly right inside that die cut opening and give that a press. Now that this is attached, we're going to go ahead and work on the focal point. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to adhere this directly to the top. So I'm going to add my adhesive once again to the back side. These have a really trendy stitch border on them, so I try to avoid glue and adhesive around there because I wouldn't want it to seep through the front. Again, I'm going to go horizontally because I have better luck of getting things even. So I'm looking here at the top and the sides, and I'm just trying to keep that equal margin all the way around. Once I'm happy with it, we're going to go ahead and tack that in place. Now we're going to add an embellishment, and I'm going to show you how this opens. These are the sparkle gems, and I love them because they come in silver, black, and like a champagne copper color. And they really can spruce up your cards beautifully. So I'm using my Take Your Pick tool to lift up one of them because there are glue dots already on the back. So I'll take a larger one here on the bottom and I'll put those on a diagonal for a little bit of visual interest. And I'm going to put the other one here near at the top. Give them a good push because of the glue dots. You want to make sure those are good and secure. Now the very first time you open the card, obviously because everything's been freshly die cut, you're going to want to push it through the front. Once it's been conditioned, you're going to be able to open up the card and see how the banner passes through the front. But the positioning of this panel is perfect because it's going to leave everything underneath hidden until you open up the hinge. Beautiful double-sided designer series paper means you get a beautiful image from the front as well as the back. So again, when this closes, the hinge is going to go through the front of the card. Now let me share with you the other cards that I made with this fun fold. Now this next one uses a brand new bundle in the online exclusives called Fluffiest Friends. It includes the stamps and the coordinating dies when you buy them as a bundle, and you're going to want them because there's some fantastic accessories inside the dies to coordinate with the stamp set. Keep in mind that online exclusives are only sold and available while supplies last. And here is that adorable card. So I used the bunny with the cupcake for the happy birthday. I brought in a pop of color because this is lemon lolly. This is sweet sorbet. I used a neutral of crumb cake cardstock, and this time I used the Stylus Shapes dies, which are also graduating sizes. And you can see here that I've added some embellishments to coordinate. This is going to open, and then inside we have our Celebrate with our cupcake. And I did add a little bit of Winkestella to the top of the cupcake. Not sure that's going to pick up on camera, but then again, this passes right through here like so. So that's my second project for you. My third one uses this. This is called Lasting Joy. It's the stamp set. It has lots of beautiful greetings with mixed fonts and some very simple floral arrangements. But with it, I paired with it the Countryside Corners dies, graduated sizes once again, and the beautiful coordinating Countryside Blossoms embossing folder to the designer paper that I chose. I used the Countryside in Designer Series paper. Do you notice a difference? I changed the orientation. So this card is going landscape versus portrait. And I wasn't sure it was going to work, but it works fantastic. So that paper really is the star of the show. There are some embellishments on here for rhinestones. And I just added some beautiful silver trim from the Elegant Trim. Use the Designer Series paper, and there's the embossing folder here on that layer. I chose to mix and match the colors on my layers, but of course you could use the same color as the card base, which means when you die cut it, you can save it for the background. This is going to open up, and this is going to pivot down. So may the years ahead be filled with lasting joy. Added some simple flowers. Now I want to point out something here to you. The inside of the flowers, I used a metallic marker. I've been getting lots of questions about this as well, and I have it linked for you on my website under Shop Craft Room Favorites. Sometimes when a stamp set doesn't include a center for your flowers or even for some embellishments or speckles, but you want that metallic look, this is a great time to bring in those metallic markers, which is exactly what I've done here. So again, this is going to come through and then swing down. Here are the 3 cards I have for you in today's project sheet. Now, as always, I'd love to know your favorite. Pop down right now in the comments and let me know which one you prefer. Lots of great birthday ideas for you tonight, and don't forget to get that free project sheet. I also want to make sure you know all about this, Stamp Studio memberships. If you love fresh ideas and you want ideas that you have never seen anywhere else, I've got you covered. Every Monday, I will send you a tutorial that includes pictures, cutting dimensions, supplies, and step-by-step instructions for a project that I've designed exclusively for these memberships. There are 2 levels, so you can take your pick, and the information can all be found on my website under memberships. Right now, we are in the midst of the last chance promotion. These are products in the current mini catalog that are retiring. So grab your wish list and take a look and make sure that you're not missing on anything that's going to be retired. Mark your calendar. I'll be back with you in 2 weeks, which will be New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024. We will not be here next Monday. It is Christmas Day, so I hope that you'll enjoy the day with family and friends celebrating. When we come back on January 1st, you're not going to want to miss it because we are using all brand new products, and I've got tons of inspiration in store for you. Gina, thanks for helping moderate with me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you all in the new year. Have a great evening, everyone.